Hey everyone, this is a very long overdue video I wanted to make, though a short notice, unfortunately. Sorry, no preparation here. But this is going to be showing you how to use the indirect bonding tray software for your more efficient workflow. Not quite as advanced, but it's going to be very quick and efficient. So here we go. What I'm going to do is I'm going to come into here into orthodontics. And now I'm going to click on, as a set of aligners, indirect bonding tray. Now here's the two different methods. I've shown before the advanced technique where you straighten out the teeth, then you bring the brackets on a quote-unquote straight wire, and then the software rewinds the teeth back to their old positions, so it allows you to basically pre-design your final alignment. Well, traditionally in ortho, what we do is we position the brackets based on various measurements of the tooth, usually a certain distance from the incisal edge or cusp tip, and along the long axis, and in the middle of the tooth. So this is going to skip all the alignment. It's going to just, we're going to segment the teeth, and then it's going to measure from either the cusp tip or incisal edge, and it's going to put the bracket on, and so it's very automated, very little work for you to do. So I'm going to click on this one. Now I'm going to import my models. I'm going to find a case. Okay, so here are the models. I just brought in a random set of models. Click on maxilla. These have actually been trimmed previous. They're older models. It does not matter at all, so ignore that. It's irrelevant to indirect bonding trays anyways. So I'm going to go ahead and click forward. You can name this patient to whatever you want. I'll just leave it there. Jaw alignment. Now, like normal, we do have to go ahead and mark our teeth. It is important that you do this pretty accurately because you are telling the software where's the mesial tooth, where's the distal of the tooth, where is the midline of the tooth, essentially. So, you know, it figures that out based on your dots. So spend a little bit of time here and try to give it as much, you know, is the best information possible. These are those small details where doing a better job here will save you more time in the future. And remember, we're trying to stay on the buccal of the teeth, right on those, you know, those buccal, mesial buccal incline or lining. I guess it would be, yeah, the incline. And let's click on Finish Marking Teeth, and let's hit Close Model. It does need to close it. This is technically unnecessary for what we're going to do here, but the software does require it. So I would foresee in the future being able to skip this step potentially. No promises there if and when that happens. For the now, we're just going to go with that. Okay, the model is closed. You can see the base. And now we can continue to the mandible. And I'm just going to skip this jaw because it's just, for the video, it's just more time, and I'm going to skip it. So the first thing it's going to do is it's going to estimate the segmentation, and then we'll get a chance to fix that as needed. Truth be told, the cool thing is unless it's, I mean, the software is pretty darn good at this, but it just isn't that important for indirect bonding trays because we're not moving teeth within the software. Okay, so here's my segmented out teeth, and the lines look pretty much perfect. So, don't need to fix it. Sure, there's a little jagged edge here, but who cares? We're not moving that tooth. So we're going to go on to model trimming. This step also, unfortunately, is unnecessary in this workflow. So we're going to go ahead and let the software do it. Again, hopefully in the future, we'll be able to skip this. Okay. Technically, we don't have to worry about this because we're not trimming the model. So this will be the trim line, but we're going to go ahead and just say don't trim the mandible or the maxilla. The mandible is grayed out because we're not doing anything with that one. So we can continue to add brackets. Notice we're continuing to add brackets, almost like adding buttons in the aligner software. We have not done any alignment evaluation. We are skipping right to the adding of brackets. Okay, so now we are ready to add the brackets, and so for the moment, at the time of this recording, we have a limited selection of brackets. We are working on adding more. We've been working for a while, but it really comes down to collaboration with the various bracket manufacturers. So if you have a type of bracket that you want, reach out to your rep and suggest that they send us or work with us on incorporating their brackets. We're not looking to replicate or print brackets. We just want to be able to have them to represent them in this file workflow. So anyway, the simple ones, most people are going to be sticking with these right here, the Roth, well, if you prefer MBT. And then down here, I like the selfie passive. It's a passive self-lighting bracket. But let's just stick with this. This is the most standard bracket system most people are probably accustomed to or learned with, I would think. So it's a standard metal bracket, one-piece metal bracket, and a Roth prescription. So I'm going to click Add, and there we go. All the brackets are aligned and positioned according to the teeth and their root surfaces. So here's the thing. You see this too? Let's hide this opposing arch. You can see where it's positioned over here. Now it is a little bit off the tooth because the tissue is getting in the way, and so that's an issue with teeth that are shorter. So that's okay, but that will cause an interference for the bracket to be seated. And so what we have to do is we just kind of have to force it against the tooth and assume that when we seat the bracket, we're going to displace the tissue with the bracket. Software does not displace it as is. I'll see if we can incorporate that in the future, but for now, just know that. So these are now pretty well positioned. You might think, well, this canine looks way off. That is simply a result of the software thinking, because of where I put my dots, that this is the midline. So unfortunately, I didn't do a very good job of positioning them. Not a big deal. There we go. And now it looks like it is fairly well aligned. Okay? And these in the front all look pretty good. This canine looks pretty good. And you notice that the dimensions, 4.5 millimeters, 4 millimeters, 3.5 millimeters, 3.5 millimeters, 4 millimeters, those numbers are all up here in your tools, preferences, orthodontics, and then right here the bracket placement offsets. So let's go ahead and pretend that I wanted these canines to be 2 millimeters from the incisal edge. That seems crazy, but since I already had to move that one, I'm going to go ahead and really mess with it for a second. And let's just say okay. Now I'm going to remove all brackets. Oh, cancel. Remove all. Now add them all again. And look at where the canines are now 2 millimeters away from the cuss tip. So that's what those preferences are. Your preferences, by default, when you download the software, will not be the same numbers as mine. So if you want to mimic mine, take a screenshot or whatever, pause the video and copy. But this is just my personal preference, what I've found to work best for me. So now I'm going to go ahead and remove all and add the brackets again, and they should come back in where I wanted them, other than that canine that's a little bit wonky. And this one that got a little bit wonky because it respected the soft tissue. Again, I think that's something I'm going to mention to the developers, that we need to have it not respect the tissue and just respect the tooth itself. So anyway, sometimes when I'm making these videos, I have ideas. Now, there is a gap. If you look, the brackets are not touching the teeth. So if we go to Tools, let's look at these preferences for a moment. Down here, we've got the indirect bonding tray. Bracket to tooth spacer. So right now, the software thinks that I want a 0.5 millimeter offset. It also thinks I want the transfer tray to be 0 millimeters off it, so there's no offset, and the transfer tray thickness of 1.5. So let's go ahead and change these numbers, because I've been messing around with it, doing some development stuff, and I'm going to change it. I'm going to tell you what I want here. I'm going to stick with a 0.2 offset there, and I'm going to stick with a 3 millimeter tray here. I've tried dialing it down, and the trays become too flexible. You can maybe go 2.5 millimeters, but I would not go much below that. I want some passivity of the tray because I don't want it to bind and flex in ways I'm not planning for. So I'm planning it just like I would a surgical guide. And I'm going to leave the bracket tooth spacer. Fortunately, that doesn't change anything about my brackets. Those are all fine, okay, because that didn't affect anything that I was changing there. What it does affect, This canine is really odd the more I stare at it, because you can see how much wear there is. I say odd. You know, her cusp tip should be right around here. So positioning the bracket is a little bit different because she got some fairly significant wear. I mean, you can see it in the, you know, everywhere else. So lastly, I'm going to prepare the IPT tray. And now there are different approaches to this. All you're doing is drawing a line. If you've done the surgical guide software or a denture, you know what you're doing here. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw my line, and I have changed my technique many times. So if you watch older videos, you might have different preferences. I have started taking it so it's just barely embedding the bracket, so that I can actually insert the tray and one by one set the brackets in the tray. It helps with cement cleanup. It's not the quote-unquote true philosophy of putting all the brackets in there, sliding the tray on, and you know, just doing it that way, which is perfectly fine. Just move your guide down lower. But again, this is just a personal preference. I want the tray to be sort of right right at the incisal tie wings. Okay. Just make sure those look pretty decent. They don't have to be perfect, but you get the idea. All right, and let's go ahead and hit continue to export. So now it's going to create this tray, this transfer tray. Now be aware that technically if the tray extends too far, we're using a flexible material. You can usually actually take a blade and shave off any material you don't want, because the material is soft. So you can take a burr or a blade and just cut it off. So that's, again, personal preference, but there you go. All right, so there's our transfer tray. You can see how when you insert it, you'll be able to put adhesive on the bracket, slide the brackets right in here, squish them up against the teeth, clean off the excess, and that's it. So let's go ahead and hide the opposing. Let's right now it is prepared to export the model and the tray. We are going to, when you apply your label, you want to make sure it's set to inert bonding tray. I like to engrave. And I'm not going to export the model. I just want this. So you can export it with a platform, or you can export it without a platform if you want. You can separate the platform. Should be able to. Oh, I'm on the wrong one. And so however you want to do it. There's different ways to print it. I'll leave that for you to decide how you want to. I can lock it right there. And that's it. Hopefully this video has helped to explain the workflow. Yeah. All right. Hope this helps. Thanks so much for listening. If you have any other questions or you have any other videos, or you're looking for other workflows, make sure you check out the rest of my YouTube channel, Baron Grutter DDS, or check out my website at barongrutterdds.com, where I try to keep track of most of this stuff. Thanks again.